Hey guys, welcome to another episode of The Follow-Up. I'm Yasmin and I'm back here with Brian. This past Sunday, we looked at the sin of envy. So speaking of this past Sunday, Brian, we've noticed a lot of energy just coming back to our city and to our church. Could you just speak more on this?
Yeah, it's been great, right? It's been a lot of fun in the last few Sundays. What's interesting is you're actually seeing it all across the U.S.
That's
and so
right.
Even my friends that I'm talking to in other cities and other places, there seems to be a type of kind of energy that's been happening. And, from our church standpoint, the last two Sundays have been the largest, outside of Easter, the largest Sundays we've ever had. And so I do think kind of in the midst of the chaos of the moment that we're in the midst of all the sadness and the confusion and the anger and lots of other things, it's a very kind of sensitive time right now. There seems to be a really unique thing that the Lord is doing, and so I feel a lot of encouragement. I mean, you're seeing it in your spaces with our prayer team. What are you sensing is happening right now?
Yeah, like even this past Wednesday, so that was our first Wednesday doing two prayer sets, two different sets back to back. And going into it, I didn't know exactly what to expect, but it was really cool just to see the people who were coming, the normal group at the 7 a.m., but this influx of people coming into the 8 a.m., whether they stayed from 7 a.m. or just a new group coming in. So that was encouraging. And then like you mentioned, the prayer team, just this past Sunday, we all got together for a conclusion of this series that we're going through on just becoming a praying church, and really just saw a turn in the room. We were going through some discussion questions, and there was really just a shift, and we just started to really press into prayer, and just went on for like close to an hour, just praying for our church, praying for our city, for our staff team and those coming in to Grace City. So really just noticing a lot of energy, a lot of just passion for the Lord and for his house and for this city. So it's been really encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, even the prayer cards that we're getting,
right.
We're seeing more of those. There just seems to be a spiritual hunger right now,
right.
whether that's through feeling encouraged, whether that's through feeling confusion, whether that's through feeling grief, whether that's through feeling lots of different things. And so I think in every team across the board within our church. And so it's a really great time to be doing church.
Yeah, no, it's good. And I think this series in particular, just hearing a lot of excitement, a lot of energy behind what we've been preaching on, and as we continue on with this series. But this past Sunday, we did talk about the sin of envy. So first, before we get into more of the questions, can you just give a quick summary as to what you preached on this past Sunday?
Yeah, so obviously been working through all of these. Envy is really this idea that it's this statement, this isn't good enough.
Yeah.
So like what I have is not good enough. And we'll talk about it. The two things are distrust God and dishonor one another. But it really does boil down to what's in front of me, my gifts, my resources, my calling, where I'm stationed in life. It's really saying to God, this isn't good enough. But it's not simply saying this isn't good enough. This isn't good enough based on someone else.
Yes, that's right.
So I'm looking at what this person has over there, someone else in your fellowship, someone else at your work, someone else on your sports team, whatever it is, and saying, based on what I'm seeing happen in their life, I'm believing the lie that what I have isn't good enough. And it's really dangerous. We talked about it of all of the sins is probably the one that steals your joy.
Yes.
The fastest.
Yeah.
Like it's the one that creates so much discontentment within you. Everything could be going well, right? You could feel really good about your life, relationship, career, all of those types of things. And the minute you see someone else succeeding, envy says, look at them.
That's right. No, that's good. We'll talk more about Ronald Rolheiser even later within our questions. But I was reading the book Sacred Fire, and then he has a book that precedes it and kind of breaks it off generationally. But one of the things he talks about, specifically in like the ages like 20 to 40, how there's like this discontent in this generation, and that we have a restlessness about us, and almost just like it's characterized by a lot of wanderlust, and that's based on what we see in other people. So I know it's something I struggle with a lot, and like don't like to admit that, but it's true. And I think it is, as you mentioned this past Sunday, something that we may not talk about a lot, but it is something that is laying on the surface within a lot of us.
Yeah, I mean, I think your generation, obviously we're separated by about 20 years. And so you have access to people and their stories and their life way more than I do. And so we know that, Gen Z, we know that kind of earlier millennials, or however you want to say that. I guess I'm on the very kind of end of that spectrum, but have access to everyone else. And so there's a natural desire to want to be better than other people.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I think that I see a lot with the younger generation that we didn't necessarily feel it as much when we were there is you all have an expectation to have what your parents have at 40 and 50.
That's true.
At 20, which is wild. And so it does create this, like, I'm supposed to have this amount of money, this amount of resources, this house. That's may not necessarily be true in our city, but you know what I mean? Like, I see, you guys have this pressure to have what your parents had, and it took your parents 30 years to get it.
Yeah.
And you feel like you're supposed to have it in 3.
Yeah.
And so it works on this kind of envy comparison thing. Many times that's based on we're seeing everyone else's story.
Yeah, no, that's good. You brought that into reality for me because I know, like, I was going... It was based on because of what I was seeing on social media, seeing in the news, seeing those around me. And I just had this like discontentment about me. And you really did bring it into perspective, giving clarity on that. And then someone else spoke it to me like about Jesus and his ministry, where it's like he didn't even start his public ministry until his 30s. So who am I in like early 20s to be thinking I have to have all this? And that's also at the expense or at the downfall of another. So it just brought it into perspective for me. But with that, I do want to bring us to one of the first points that you made in your sermon. You talked about how envy creates this distrust of God and it's a dishonor for another. So what I want to do is just run through a couple of the biblical narratives that we see and how we see this playing out in this distrust towards God. And then we also see this in the world today. But through these biblical stories, we see Adam and Eve, like in the beginning. Eve had this status. She wanted to get the status that God had reserved for himself, and this led both Adam and Eve to exile. We see with their children, with Cain and Abel, Cain envied Abel's status, and he killed his brother for this. And then God ultimately removed Cain from the land and told him that he would be a restless wanderer. Then we see later with Jacob, he envied the blessing his father intended to give his older brother Esau. So as a result, he deceived his father and he stole the birthright, which forced him to flee to a foreign land. And then even the devil, we see the devil envy God, and as a result, he was cast out of heaven. So it's for this first point that you talked about, to the side of trusting God. How can we draw closer to God when we feel envy rather than pull away from him?
Yeah, I think it starts with honesty.
Yeah.
I think we talked about naming it. I think that when we feel, and we really learned this with grief in our personal life, but I think when we feel envy, we state it out loud to God.
Yeah.
We just say, hey, I have this feeling right now. I'm looking at what others have, and I'm desirous of it in a way that's unhealthy and incorrect. And so we're naming that in prayer before him. And so I think that's really important. And then I think the work of remembering. So when I feel a sense of envy, and I shared a couple of personal stories on Sunday, but when I feel those things, I look back on God's faithfulness over my life, right? And I think this is why we should journal. I think this is why we should kind of keep a database, if you will, of God's faithfulness in our life, because it can be very easy for us to believe the lie that God doesn't care for us. Yeah. And so I kind of go back into that literal kind of database that I have in my kind of journaling work, and I just simply go through. If you look at my prayer, kind of how I do my prayer, I have a whole section on requests that the Lord has answered. And I can just scroll through those and look at that, and it really begins to quiet the envy and quiet the lie that God isn't faithful. So I think it's the work of remembering. We see it in the Bible all throughout.
That's really good. That's really good. Even a few weeks ago, I know I texted you and Katie about this, but I had this box of like things that I had just stored up over time, almost like acting as stones of remembrance. Like, look at what the Lord has done, and just like keeping these things. And I was looking through it and found something that you and Katie had given me. I texted that over to you. But I think it was in that moment I was feeling like super sentimental. But in that space, I was like, Lord, you have been so faithful and so kind. How would I not trust you with all that you've given me and entrusted me with? So it is that work of remembrance. And then, like you said, just naming it before God. Like, we see Adam and Eve, that God called on them before they called to him. We see that Cain, he refused to enter into conversation with God, and that the older brother in the New Testament, he leaves the party and the father has to go and pursue him and find him. So it's like we can come to our Father and confess these things to him because he is first pursuing us. So I think that's good as well.
Yeah.
But with the other side of that, so you talked about honoring others and how envy dishonors those around us, and it kind of disrupts our communities. So how can we honor others and what God is doing in their lives and hold that intention with areas that we might feel discontent in?
Yeah, well, we talked about increasing in our celebration of others and the role of that. And so I think we work to offer sincere and specific compliments to what people are doing.
That's good.
So you're looking for opportunities, and you're trying to find, like, okay, how can I in this moment encourage Yasmin in this particular thing? And so I'm giving really specific things on that. I think that what we need to do is when we look at our peers or others, see this as an opportunity to learn from them and actually be driven by what we're seeing happen in their life. And we'll talk about contending kind of at the bottom part of this, but I think we need to view it not as, oh, this is something that I think God is keeping from me, but view it as, man, I'm seeing what the Lord is doing, and I want to take that as an opportunity to kind of learn from that and kind of see that. And then I think encourage where you can. So how can I support and come alongside of what others are doing, right? And so maybe it's sharing something that someone's doing that maybe in the past I wouldn't have, because I feel a sense of jealousy or envy on that, and just simply saying, like, yeah, I'll send that text out for you, or I'll if I have the resources to help in some sense or way, I'll do that. And it's just kind of coming alongside their story. It's again, much of this is doing it until you feel it. That's right. And most of our Christian walk is, I'm going to do these things before I actually feel the desire to do these things. I think many times we think, I need to feel a certain way before I do. And that's just not the case. Yeah, like, that's it just isn't the case. Usually it's, let me begin to do the stuff, and then I feel my heart begin to turn.
Let it transfer from the head into the heart. That's right. Now, one of the things, we alluded to this at the beginning even of this episode, but talking about how envy is often the sin that nobody wants to admit. So this idea, let's say the sin of pride, like it can be like a subtle brag, even like I have to confess pride that like my resume is being built up and my business is taking off. Or even like you mentioned in Christian communities, like those struggling with lust, let's say, there's support communities around this, but envy is often the one that goes hidden. So with that being said, what are some of the subtle ways that you see this sin play out in our city? And what is the warning for us as the church and as believers here in Boston?
Yeah, so we've mentioned already, but I think the way that it tends to manifest itself is obviously it starts with comparison. Yeah. And so when you find yourself comparing yourself to others, over focusing on what they have versus on what you lack, right? That's a way it's manifesting itself. I think it manifests itself through negative judgments of others. So we're criticizing, we're downplaying the achievements of others, and so we're looking at that and going like, oh, that's that they got that because of this, and so we're always trying to downplay what is happening there. I think it manifests itself through gossip. So we're spreading rumors or these kind of negative comments about others to diminish their reputation because we feel envious of their reputation. So now we're going to try and destroy them in that. And then I think when it comes to this idea of ambition, there's godly ambition and there's sinful ambition. Right. Sinful ambition says, because ambition's not wrong, sinful ambition says, I need to be better than you and I need to dominate you. And so I think when you find yourself responding at your work, school, whatever endeavor it is that you're looking at, and it's not that you're seeking to do it to glorify the Lord or to do it to the best of your ability, but you're seeking to do it to dominate others, to destroy others, that is envy at work in your life. Yeah, that's really good. Even just like a really like example in my own life. So I used to race cross country, had this friend, and we were like best friends, did everything together, and then we would run together. But like had this, and it was a healthy competition, but oftentimes I would see the envy come out. If she beat me in a race or got a spot that I wanted, I became envious of her. And as her friend, I should be wanting to like love her and support her in this. But instead I saw this envy coming out. But then in May, I was visiting friends in Kentucky, and I was with their daughter. She was about like 5 years old, and we were playing this game of like, let's just hide the bowl somewhere in the garden, and then the other person has to go and find it.
And in my head, I'm like, okay, this kid's probably so competitive and like probably wants my downfall and wants me to lose. But what she actually did in that space is she led me to the bowl that she hid. She helped me find it. And then she continued to celebrate this. And I'm like, that's just, and like, you're such a girl's girl. Like, she was just so supportive. And it's like a silly little example, but I think that was like illustrative of the larger body of Christ, that we should be supporting and helping one another and celebrating one another's accomplishments. That when we find this, like, I'm going to celebrate you and honor you in this, instead of just like preying on your downfall or envying that. So I thought it was beautiful. Just like a little 5-year-old kid showing me this.
Well, and it's the hardest thing.
Yeah.
So my son is 7. He's really competitive, and I'm helping coach a soccer team. And he wants to win so bad, and he feels so terrible. Like he doesn't. There's something inside of him. He hates to see others succeed on an athletic field, and so a lot of the work that I'm doing is trying to address into his little heart. Hey, that's envy, what you're feeling right now, and God calls us to celebrate others. Now we want to do well.
Yes,
I want to win. Listen, I'm not against winning.
That's right.
But it's like trying to, even in his little heart, help him identify you're feeling envious because you're comparing yourself in this moment, and we got to kind of quench that, right?
Yeah, that's good. Start it while they're young and just raise them in that way.
Maybe he should spend some time with that girl.
I know.
That would probably be
I know,
the better.
she taught me a lesson in that moment. It was sweet. But speaking of that, so Ronald Rolheiser, again, I mentioned him at the beginning, but he does have this book, Sacred Fire. And I just want to read this quote in this episode and then go through some of the questions that he talks about. It's his inventory of deadly sin. But he says that one of the ways that envy manifests itself is that the mature adult is in the form of feeling threatened, however subtly, by the talents, achievements, and beauty of others. In essence, we feel diminished by other people's greatness, and we find ourselves nitpicking and looking for flaws rather than blessing the talent and achievement of others. And then from that quote, he starts talking about taking this inventory of the deadly sin in our own lives. So can you explain just real quick what that process of taking inventory is?
Yeah, so he gives 6 questions there I think are really, really helpful. And so let me just kind of read these off because I think these are great. He said this is kind of how you take the inventory. He says, how often in a given day do I praise another as opposed to criticizing them? So if you're kind of looking at your day and going, what's my praise versus criticize kind of tally marks, if you're taking those tally marks. Second question, how often do I nitpick and why do I nitpick, right? So am I just trying to take kind of people or things apart? Third question, why do I find it much easier to be empathetic with someone who is hurting? This question is strong.
Yeah.
Why do I find it much easier to be empathetic with someone who's hurting as opposed to sharing truly in someone else's good fortune?
That's right.
So it's like, do I take great pleasure in watching someone downfall than I do in seeing them succeed in that? All right, next question. Why do I experience a secret glee upon hearing about the fall from grace of a celebrity, of someone in my field, anybody that you kind of look at maybe that is more well-known within your kind of circle? Is there a secret kind of glee and joy in watching that downfall? Now, there's a right level of, God, thank you that this person, perhaps that maybe we look at and like there's rightfulness in the justice of God, but there's not this type of secret glee that should be happening in that sense. Okay, next question. He says, why do I struggle to bless younger people? Now, this is more for the older people, but it's a right thing to, as you get older, going, am I actually blessing the younger people? That question. Anyways. And then final question, when did I truly praise a younger person of the same sex?
Yeah.
So he kind of talks about there's this little bit of a competition between male and male and female and female. And so I think it boils down to envy makes us see one another as a threat.
Yes.
And envy says they're going to take your glory. Now, we know the biblical mandate is to consider others more significant than yourselves.
Yeah.
That is the biblical call. Now, where do we get that? Jesus.
Yeah.
That's who teaches us what it means to love and care for one another. And so I thought those questions were so helpful.
Yeah. And just want to thank you. I mean, even for that second to last question, just blessing younger people. Like, you have set the example of what it looks like to bring younger people alongside of yourself and to raise them up in the work of ministry. Like, we even see this charge to train the saints for the work of ministry, to equip them in this. So just thank you for the way you've done that, like with myself, with Max, David. I know a lot of us are just grateful for that.
You keep me young.
Keep us around, yeah. Well, that brings me to the last question before our final takeaway. So on Sunday, you did give some guidance of what it looks like to rule over envy. But can you explain more about how we can rule over this sin and then move in the opposite spirit?
Yeah, we've said in all of these sins, it's not about simply focusing on the negative, but it's not about how do we move forward out of that. And so if you're someone struggling with envy, a couple of things we said. We said we have to make a regular practice of gratitude and celebration, right? And so this is kind of like, we see this in the Old Testament. We see it with the Israelites. We see it in these various ways where people look at it and go, man, God, thank you for what you've done, what you provided for me. And so there's that regular practice of gratitude and celebration. I don't know. I struggle with celebrating well. I tend to be so driven that you guys probably all know that. So all the staff would agree with this. I struggle with wanting to celebrate. I kind of want to keep driving forward. But there's something really important about that. I think we have to anchor our contentment in God's provision.
Yeah, that's
right. And so we have to look at it and go, okay, what are the ways that God has provided for me?
Yeah.
You know, and we're going to talk about 2 Peter 1 talks about we've been given all things. We're going to talk about this week as well, but we've been given all things for life and godliness, right? Jesus tells a parable about look at the birds of the air, look at the lilies of the field. Like we have to really anchor ourselves in God is my provider.
That's
He's
good.
The Lord is my shepherd. I have what I need, right? Psalm 23. Number 3 is we have to remember our calling and our unique story. This is so important. Envy wants you to stay so distracted on everyone else's calling and story and ability and resources that you never step into yours. And I do wonder sometimes how many people miss their calling because they're so over-focused on someone else's calling. And I think that's some of the danger of what envy does in our life. Number 4, we have to confess to God and to others our discontentment and envy. So we've already talked about that. We need to be honest with the Lord and honest with others as we're feeling that. And then finally, we need to meditate on the promises received in Christ.
Yeah,
right. And so there's so many things that the scriptures tell us that we've received righteousness and forgiveness, redemption, received spiritual blessings in Christ. And so all of it is Christ in you, the hope of glory, right? Everything is coming to us through Christ. And finally, I would just say, the envious workers, we talked about that parable. The envious workers missed the invitation from God. They were so envious that the people at 5 got the same amount that they did. And really what Jesus is trying to say is the invitation to participate in the kingdom of God is the gift, right? Now he's highlighting the grace of God in that moment, but he's also trying to say the invitation to work alone is the prize. And so don't focus on all what the other people have. Just recognize, God, thank you that you've invited me into this kingdom work. Yeah,
that's good. It's this movement from just observation into participation. We have this invitation to return back to the garden, his creation, and steward well what he has given us. So I think just focusing on that from that perspective really does just change everything for us.
Yep, that's right.
But for 2 final takeaways, so first, can you just give us an approachable book that has been helpful for you in your prep?
Yeah, there's been a couple books that I've mentioned, but I still think, so there's that pocket guide to overcoming the 7 deadly sins. It's very small. I would commend that to people. A lot of the content or information that we look at, he just does a really good job inside of that book. And then R.T. Kendall has a book on forgiveness. Forgiveness and envy and jealousy that is also really good. It's kind of a little bit of R.T. Kendall's a little bit old school, but still good.
And then any closing thoughts for us as we finish out this podcast?
Yeah, I think that, and I mentioned it in the opening, I think that if you find yourself lacking joy and you find yourself continually comparing yourself to others and you find yourself not stepping into your unique calling and gifting, I think I would just say to you, take an assessment of, if I'm looking at others too much, how am I looking at others? And maybe there's some work to be done around creating some boundaries and some barriers to do that. And I think there's just a reorientation of the heart that has to happen inside of that.
Yeah, that's really good.
Any closing thoughts from you? Any thoughts?
Any closing thoughts from me? I mean, just to press in on that, like, pay attention to what you're focusing in on. Psalm 73, that's what I'll leave us with, is like, you're looking to the left and to the right and you find this discontentment from it. But once you enter the Lord's sanctuary, fixing your eyes upon him, that's when you realize that he is your portion. His presence is your good. So just pay attention to where you're looking. And feel free to, like, for me, it was like removing social media for a little bit, just like taking my eyes off of that and just focusing in on Christ. But yeah, thank you for joining us today. Thanks for tuning into this episode. Just know that we do have an exciting weekend coming up. We have Encounter Night this Thursday with Harvest Grapevine. Saturday, we have a prayer lab in the morning. And then Sunday, we'll be back as we talk about the sin of acedia. And then Harvest will also be leading worship there. But we thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.